We are on the air. So, sorry for the late start, guys. Welcome to another Believe in Magic Plays Q&A. We have with us the powerful Peter, the Perceptionist Turner. Peter Turner, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for having me.
All right. So, while everybody's building up, we generally like to start off with a quick, who are you, where'd you come from, and what's your story, man? Enlighten us.
I'm from a small town in West Yorkshire, that's in England, called Bradford. And Bradford, for those who don't know, is where Dynamo's from. We literally grew up, they call them council estates or projects, so I don't know, they might call it in the Bronx in the US, but there's literally patches of council estates in Bradford, and I come from one and he's from the other one. So I started magic when I was about 6 years old. I got into it at about 5 years of age. Didn't have any way to start it, so I just started creating things at about 6. And then I'll get into more depth on this later on. And then about 11 years old, I moved and started to work on a magic store. At 15, I saw Darren Brown and got into mentalism, and I've been doing mentalism since. And it's been a crazy journey. So, in regards to who am I, I'm called Pete, and I'm a mind reader, or I try to read minds.
And that you do. In the pre-interview is pretty intense stuff, man. I am getting to the. Let's see here. I'm getting to questions right here. Finally got them. Sorry, that's what happened to my phone recently. I don't know if you can see all those breaks. Let's see here. We got questions coming in left and right, and people are just popping up. So hey guys, hey everyone that's here. We got a question from Lance Sinclair. I've heard that there is an underground book you know about entitled The Book of Demons. I'm aware that it has great information. Is this something you know about? Can you say in the Q&A how someone would get that book?
So, the Book of the Demons is one of those elusive books, and the reason it's so elusive is because if you try to look online for it, you'll find very little information about it. And what tends to be a massive problem, and it's a problem that every single artist who releases something has to endure or has to go through, is copyright. And the problem is, and it's something that we mentioned earlier on, a friend of mine, John's, just had a problem with this. You can't keep anything safe. So this book's one book that if you try to find, you won't find it. If you try to find anybody that owns it, the likeliness is you'll never find anybody that owns it, and you'll indefinitely never be able to buy a copy from somebody that's bought it previously. And the reason being is because I vet everybody down strategically when I'm selling this book, and it's a book that I fly a lot. So if you follow me on Facebook, you'll see that I travel a hell of a lot. And for most people who watch me on Facebook will think I've just got back from Vegas, and that's in fact incorrect. As you know, I've just come back from France. So I flew from Vegas, I got home, I was home for one night, I flew out to France for an afternoon, I come back, I turned down a job in Holland, and there's been a little bit of space in between, but here we are now, and I'm due to fly out again next week, and then after the week after that I fly out again. So I'm constantly traveling, and because I spend a lot of time traveling, it means I get a lot of time to think and a lot of time on my own. And the stuff that I've actually released to the mentalism community is about, I'd say about 5% of the things that I've actually stored upstairs. Now my problem is with traveling so much and with consulting and directing and everything else, it's very easy to forget a good idea. So I used to type the ideas into my telephone and text the ideas to myself so that I could glance back at them and then I'd build on them later on, which is a real cool way if you want to do that. But my problem is if you've seen recently, I lose my stuff. So anybody that knows me knows that I'll put my keys down on the table, I'll put my wallet down on the table, and I'll just stand up and walk off because my head's in the clouds most of the time. So I stopped storing my stuff in my phone because I must have gone through about 10 phones in the last year, and I started writing. And one problem is when you write, and I don't know if you've experienced this yourself, but you'll sit down to write and you'll want to write the general idea or the outline of the idea, and what happens is that things just start to pour out creatively, and you just start to pour out, and you become so engrossed in what you're writing that you often end up at a destination that you never endeavored getting to in the first place. So the Book of the Demons essentially were born out the back of that. It's ideas that I've not released to the public domain. It's ideas that I've not set up and released as a product. It's ideas that I've not, I think there's only a few people on the planet that own the book. But the thing that's so great about the book is that at the end of each year, you send the book back. And when you send the book back or you destroy it and I physically see you destroying the book, I've added updates and you just pay for the reprint, and then I send the reprint back out to you. So it's a book that's constantly growing. And it was started as something that was 9 pages long, and now it's up at 500 pages, and it's still not got all the updates in it. So and these are, small font. It's 11.5, and we're up at 500 pages, and there's no images in the book. So it's a tome, really. It's a really big book. So yeah, so getting hold of it is, I'd have to know who you are, I'd have to know where you're from. There's the thing with it is you can't resell it because obviously it keeps getting updated. So for a lot of people, it's not going to be worth buying. But if you wanted any more information, it's very expensive. It'd probably be best to private message me. So, yeah.
All right. And you do a lot of stuff that tends to be propless. And I mean, you're talking about no images, so I doubt there's any sleight of hand involved. It sounds more like there's a lot of stuff coming out. You have like more popular releases like COG and whatnot. It's a lot of that style of mentalism. That seems to be like very much where you are completely now.
Well, COG's not my release, and I think that one thing that was really cool is Ben Seaward's. Ben messaged me, and this was a really cool thing. Somebody, I think it was D. Christopher, that said to Ben, you need to contact Pete and talk to Pete about it, because I'm sure Pete's told me something that was very similar. Now, I sent Ben a block of stuff that I'd been working on using a similar principle, and not come up with the same idea. And I think Ben were a little bit upset that he'd not come up with the entirety of the ways to use this first. And I just said to him, man, don't be stupid. What you've got there is incredible, and I went out, and because I've been using it for so long, he said, would you mind doing the trailer? So we went out and we shot a quick trailer on a mobile telephone. It's probably the worst quality trailer ever. It's not fancy, but I like the feel of it because it's very raw. That's just to get that out of the way. So that's not my creation. That's Ben Seaward's creation. I had the only affiliation I had with it was filming the trailer and being credited in the book. But it's amazing how many people actually message me to ask me if there's going to be a COG 2 or if I'm, or whatever, and it's not my release. And to answer your question, one thing that a lot of people don't know about me, and my people who spend a lot of time with me know, is that the Propler stuff happened by accident, because that's the way that I think. But, and this is where the big book comes in, I'm well versed when it comes to technical method as well. So when it comes to mechanical methods, I know an array of them, and anybody who gets to spend any time on Skype with me will say I must have about 600 different peaks that I know a multitude of different switches, and my toolbox, essentially the toolbox is as big as I can make it, because I want to make sure that when I'm doing a job, and I don't mean a job as in, I'm using it as a metaphor, I don't mean a job as in a performance or a paid performance. I mean just if I'm ever doing anything, whether it's on something like this or whether it's in a paid performance or whether it's off the cuff down at a bar, I want to know that I've got the right tool in the toolbox to finish the job. So it's no good taking a hammer and trying to hammer a screw into the wall. Yeah, it'll work, but it'll be very messy. I want to ensure that I've got the right size screw for the job. I want to ensure that I've got the plug for the wall. I want to ensure that I've got the right size screwdriver. So Propless is, I find that for me, it's easier because moving something mechanically is a lot more difficult than moving something linguistically. And I know that sounds something that's a strange concept for a lot of people, but that's why I find techniques like equivocate or equivoke, depending on how you like to pronounce it, such good techniques if they're done correctly. And I say done correctly, I don't do them the standard way, and I'm not going to really get into. If you watched, I did an interview some time ago, if you look back on that, you'll see there's sort of the ways that I sort of do that, and I make it look seamless. And for me, I think that it's easier to move your language and make somebody forget something you've said a lot quicker than it is to make somebody forget a mechanical move or something they've seen. So I'll give you a good example of this. Can you tell me what I said one sentence back? You might be able to tell me the rough outline, but could you tell me it word for word?
No.
And that shows you how easy it is to make words disappear. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, is that once a word comes out, it's not existable in a tangible form. So therefore, it becomes very easy to make that disappear or steer somebody off using verbals or verbal acrobatics, sleight of mouth, as opposed to sleight of hand. So I didn't really train the same way that everybody else trained, and I'm not saying everybody else, I'm just using the term everybody else as a mass, the mass demographic, not everybody, but I sort of I couldn't afford books, I couldn't afford products, and right up until the age of about 20, 21, 22, I never had any money. I worked 3 jobs, and I just managed to get by. And when I say get by, for example, I lived, I think 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, I lived on Buttershaw Council Estate, which is a project, or a Bronx. I lived in a 2-bedroomed flat. One of the bedrooms was so small you couldn't call it a bedroom, and we used to have to run an extension cord from the neighbour's house downstairs just to have electricity in the property, because we couldn't afford electricity. We lived off instant noodles. So it's, you know, at the time I never had, there were more pressing things to worry about. And I'd have been about 20 years old, because what happened was I made the definitive decision that I'm working so hard with the 3 jobs that I were working, I'm going to move into performing professionally, because this is what I loved, and I created and created and created using nothing, because I didn't have the same ideas to piggyback off to create new things. So I still, to today, in all honesty, I try to be not ignorant. I think ignorance is the wrong word, but I try to almost block out what's coming out and what's being released, and not that I don't do my referencing. As soon as I've created an effect, that's when I'll search for the references for the credits. And the reason being, this is one problem that I've had, and I have this problem crop up quite a bit. Every single week I must get at least 100 people ask me if I can look at something that they've created. So I'll use this as an analogy, or you know, as an example. Let's say that you'd created, I don't know, drawing duplication, and I've got a new drawing duplication that's about to come out that I've not mentioned to anybody else. You send me a message and you said to me, Peter, can you look over this drawing duplication for me? So I said, fine. And then let's coincidentally say that it has a similar method to one that I'm creating that you didn't know that I were creating, I didn't know you were creating it. The problem being there is when I release mine 2 or 3, 4 weeks later, it appears from your perspective that I've stolen your material. So I try to avoid getting myself in situations. It's very easy when I'm getting sent so many products to get myself in situations like that. And so I try to avoid reading products. I try to avoid spending my time referencing products until it's absolutely necessary, because I find that for me, it's very easy to influence me to take me off somewhere else. And I've had that happen in the past.
Right.
You know, one particular example is Stephen Palmer. He released a book which is great. You need to check it out. Method Memorabilia, and he had a PK time thing in there. And I have a piece called A Moment from a Memory in Time, and it's essentially a PK time piece where somebody creates an entire memory, and the spectator not only predicts the entire memory, but they predict the exact time that the memory took place. So it sort of confirms it all via confirmation bias. And Stephen, in passing, just like we're chatting now, he just mentioned something that he'd been working on, but he didn't have a reason to use it or an area to use it in. And I started to use it. I just started to perform it and lecture it that way, and I forgot that I completely forgot he'd told me about it. And it wasn't until I lectured at Tamworth, I didn't release this at the time, it wasn't until I lectured in Tamworth that he came up and he said, oh, I see you using this start of the PK time routine. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And at that point I sort of realised that it's very easy for you to forget when you're learning so much and when you're taking in so much, to forget where something comes from, and I try to avoid that now because I don't want any discrepancies or any problems in my own work. So yeah. So sorry for going off on the tangent. You'll find that throughout this that I end up going off on some big tangent and then I come back to the initial point. So to answer your question, I don't jump to propolis material out of necessity. I don't jump to it out of choice. I just find that for me, a lot of the time, I can get to where I need to be quicker using language. But still, right. I think again, just to quickly press, the method for me is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me as long as the product is bigger than the sum of its parts. I think, you know, the method for me doesn't really matter. So as long as I get to where I need to be, and it's not, and it's for everybody else's benefit, and they get to experience something wonderful, I think the method's really irrelevant.
Right, absolutely. That seems to be a big theme with the mentalists that we've had on very recently. Is it's less about the trick and more about the connection that you're having. It's a conversation I had with a painter just a couple of days ago. Is that an artist is nothing without an audience. You're just some crazy guy doing stuff at that point. Like once you have an audience, then you can connect with that audience, then it becomes art because it's such an objective thing.
It is. I think Stuart Prester had a really nice point there when he said, you know, the kid, and he got this from Wonderwords, where the kid comes up and he says, this is where he gives the kid credit for the magic, and the kid says, it was you that did it. I like that moment, and I think if you watch the interview, like I said, it was us. And I think the us is, for me, the important thing. I really like that analogy, and I thought that, you know, for me, instead of trying to be above your audience, or instead of trying to be some teacher that has some special ability, which if that's your character or that's your persona, that's great. You know, I'm not here to try to teach anybody to suck eggs or to be patronizing in any sense. For me, I think it's about how you connect with your audience. And there's a little quote that I use that I came up with a while ago, and it's this for me is as a little about telepathy as it is as much about empathy. I try to get in tune with people's feelings because I feel that, and I use the term feel, I feel it's easier to connect with somebody on an emotional level than it is on an intellectual level, because the idea is as soon as you try to connect with somebody on an intellectual level, it's almost a battle of wits. It becomes a battle of intellect, and it becomes about being smarter than them or them being smarter than you. And that's not the easiest or best way to create rapport. Whereas if you connect with somebody on a level that they understand and that they feel, you instantly create a better connection, and the likeliness is that they remember you for the rest of their lives, and that's something that's important. You know, I think that's one of the most important things you can do is spread joy and honor to absolutely everybody else.
Absolutely, man. Got a question came in from Sean McCarthy. He says, I have a question for Pete. Mentalism is constantly going through fads. We were talking earlier about the propless fad that is right now. It's very, you know, there's this big movement of going completely propless that people have. He says, what modern effects or techniques do you feel are most likely to become classics? And what do you feel is the most unappreciated technique in mentalism today?
So this is a thing that is a very good question, because for me the reason I think that things become fads is because of all of our own personal underconfidence. So it sounds ridiculous, does that? I mean, every single one of us, even though we come across as confident, we tend to find that we performers, we have an air of self-doubt. And one of the worst positions a mind reader or a mentalist can find himself in is when somebody turns around and says, what am I thinking now? Go and show me something, read my mind. And one of the worst moments in any mentalist's career is when that happens, and you have to turn around and say, it doesn't really work like that. I just can't show you right now. I mean, if you really could read minds, or if you really could connect with somebody telepathically, then you should surely be able to do that any time. And the only time you shouldn't be able to do that, and I think that is if, for example, Uri Geller were really good at this. You know, when the connection was lost, or there was something that ended the connection. And if anybody wants to check out a beautiful moment, and it's a medium that does this, so the likeliness is that you won't like the person that's performing based off the back of what they're doing. But if you can push aside your inhibitions or your beliefs, George Anderson, the medium, not the mentalist, has this beautiful moment where, and I don't know if there's a method to this, but I can only just pretty much predict the method, and it's not written up anywhere because he's a medium. Is he would be right? He has this thing where he's got his hand on a pad and he's doing this. He's not actually writing anything. He starts to pick up on things, and then all of a sudden he stops and he says the connection's lost. And just as he says the connection's lost, lightning cracks in the sky, and the audience can, the people in the audience can see the lightning crack, and it's such a beautiful moment because he's incorporating things like that to really press a point that there genuinely is a connection. Now, I thought that were a beautiful moment, and maybe just counted, the amount of time between thunder. I don't know. I couldn't. As a kid, we used to do the thing where we counted the rumble in the clouds to try to predict when thunder were going to come, or when lightning were going to come, whatever. Maybe usually something like that. But I think incorporating stuff like that to prove there's a connection is beautiful. And again, I'm going off on a tangent here, so you'll have to excuse me. But I think that it's one of them moments. I think so. The word necessity is not the right word. I think convenience is the right word. Convenience. It's not convenient to carry around a box of props. It's not convenient to carry around pockets and pockets and pockets of props. So I think people are thinking to themselves, if I have nothing, I can do this with nothing. So it means I can do it any place, any time. And it's more convenience, I think, that makes it a fad than it being a necessity, or it's more convenient, And at the same time, I think they want to place their time into that because from their perspective, it's better than billet work. And for me, I personally have no preference. I have no preference in the two. There's a common question that gets asked, and over billet, and you see people posting ridiculous answers like a billet is better from an audience's perspective than billetless, and other people will say, well, how could it be, because there's a prop implemented in place. Now the fact of the matter is this, and I don't know how much in terms we could talk of methods, so I'm going to try to keep it to a minimal, but it's why you're using what you use. In Magic, you don't really need to justify what you're doing. Like, for example, you don't have to say, here's a regular deck of cards. You're going to take one out. This means if you're taking them like this, I can't touch them and I can't force one. But in Mentalism, it's nice to do that sometimes. I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes, because not only does it add to the presentation, but it also means that it kills any other logical explanation off, meaning that whatever you're saying is the only logical route the participant can take. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that I was going to force you a playing card, and let's say I was going to force you whatever the top card was at the time. So you give me a deck of cards. Sorry, I give you a deck of cards. You shuffle the deck of cards up. I take the cards back and I peek the top card, and then I force you the top card. I tell you to place the card behind your back. Now, all of a sudden, the position we're in here is just a standard magic trick. We're in the position of a standard magic trick. But what makes it different from magic, and this is the beautiful moment, is saying, now let's take a look at what's happened and the recap. The recap is what's important. You took this deck of cards and you shuffled them. And that means that this deck of cards couldn't have been in a strategic order. That means there's no way that I could know the order of the cards, and ergo there's no way I could force a playing card. So that eliminates the fact that this could have been in order. It eliminates the fact I could have forced a playing card, even if you have forced a playing card. And you will have noticed, for the more sceptical people here, that I asked you to place the playing card behind your back. The reason that I asked you to place the playing card behind your back is I can't see through your body, and that means that if these cards were marked, which they're not, there's no way that I can see the marking. So there's only one way I can get to that playing card. Do you know what that is? And you ask the question to the audience, and somebody will answer by reading Alex, for example. And now that stone's set in place that you're going to be reading somebody to get to the card, and it's them that's logically come up with the answer, and therefore the justifications, I think, very much serve a big purpose. And it's the same with, a billet. It's the same when you take a billet out and you're going to ask somebody to write something down for whatever purpose. People say you don't need to justify that moment. Just take it out and give it to them and ask them to write it down. That's fine. If you're in a corporate setting and you don't have the time to justify it, but every time you have an excuse to justify something like this, there's two reasons why I'd justify it. One, if somebody says to me, go on then read my mind, and you say, okay, and they say, what am I thinking now? An easy answer is just to give them a piece of card and say, I want you just to write down what you're thinking of, because even if I said out loud what I think you're thinking of, everybody here knows you're skeptical natured, and we all know that you're going to change your mind at the last moment. Now that's a logical justification, but it's not to do anything other than serve a purpose of confirmation. Now on the flip side, you can't say that to everybody, because not everybody is going to be skeptical natured. So I might look at you, for example, Alex, and I might say, now what I feel from you is fairly empathetic sort of person, and I feel in the past, because of the past adversities that you've been through, you've cared for people so much you've often wondered, when's it time for me? And I'm almost feeling now that you keep people at arm's reach because of that. And I also know you're the sort of person that wouldn't want somebody to look ridiculous in a scenario like this. So even if I was to guess something you were thinking of, the likeliness is that even if I were wrong, you'd probably agree with me to ensure that I didn't look stupid in front of a room full of people. And I think that people know you're that caring, that you're that sort of person. You do that. So I want you to take this, and I want you to write down what you're thinking of, and that'll serve as a confirmation at the end to prove to everybody else that you're not just agreeing with me. And all of a sudden, there's a logical justification for giving it to somebody who's kind-hearted. There's a logical justification because it serves as a tool of confirmation for the audience, and that's the hit that they receive. You know, and I think that a lot of the time that when we talk about the idea of propless and not propless, the only thing that makes either one of them relevant is the process. You know, if you're going to ask 50 questions to get to something that's nothing, then it's not worth doing it propless. And that's what I said earlier. It really doesn't matter what you're doing as long as the product is bigger than the sum of its parts. You know, it's a line that I mentioned earlier. So for me, I think that fads tend to be based off of convenience. I mean, look at it this way. If I said to everybody to reach into their pockets and take out their mobile phones, I bet 95% of people have smartphones. That's just because it's convenient to have one. We can do as Facebook on there, we can use WhatsApp, we can use... And everybody will consider that the norm. But when you talk to the traditionalists about using, you know, propless methods, a lot of them, the old guard, tend to be, we don't need it, we don't need it. But I think it does serve a very big place in the sense of convenience as opposed to, you know, I think it's convenient to do it. So that answers that question in a roundabout way, and I'm sorry I do rabbit on for a long time, and I hope you're getting something out of this. But I find that a lot of the time that fads can go and it's just based off convenience, and that's it. And what do I think is going to be a really big thing in the future? So you can take this from me now. I reckon there's going to be two subject areas that become really, really big. One of them, and I'm not going to go into what they are because I don't want anybody creating off the back of this, is audience pooling or matrixing. I think that's going to be very, very big. And I think that if you look now at the way that the mentalism industry is moving in comparison to 5 years ago, it all used to be about body language. It used to be about reading body language, and now it's not. We've moved into this era where it's more intuitive, and we're more open to using tarot cards, we're more open to using star sign divinations, we're more open to using pendulums, we're more open to the idea of reading somebody. Whereas if you look back 5 years, the idea of a mentalist actually reading somebody like a psychic, you were a no-no. If you didn't explain that you wasn't psychic and that you wasn't mediumistic, that were a big no-no. And now I don't think people care as much. But I think that we've shifted into almost a zone of the grey area where we say that everything that I can do, you can do, and this is nothing more than intuition. So for me, this is not psychic or mediumistic. It's not scientific. It's the grey area that exists between the aggregate of those groups.
So you're talking about the urban shaman movement that's been currently going on for the most part.
Almost. I think that's still too strong. But take that and then take the body language and sort of meet in the middle, and that's almost the point that we're at now. And I think that we're moving slightly to realizing that whatever works, whatever technique works, it doesn't matter. Whatever means to making it feel like you know somebody a little bit better, use it. So readings are very much becoming popular. So I think audience pooling, matrixing, and if anybody wants to know what that is, just watch Ted Karmelovich's No Prop Nightclub Act or get the lecture notes. There's a beautiful piece at the beginning with the star signs, and that's going to be very popular. So I guarantee that audience pooling or matrixing, that's going to be a very, very popular technique. I think cold reading is going to be very popular in the next 6 months to a year. And what modern techniques do I think are going to become classics? Again, it's the word technique, and it's very difficult to sort of label a technique as being something that's going to become a classic, but we tend to think like that, so I'll try to answer it from the perspective of and I say modern mentalist, which is a rude term, but I think it's going to be verbal acrobatics. Again, I think it's going to be the proper stuff, and I know that pretty much goes against what I said a moment ago, but I think that's what's going to become traditional technique. I think there's going to be a book or a tome that's created based off the back of going out and doing everything with nothing, and doing 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours without taking anything with you. You know, when I flew over to Vegas, I think it shocked a lot of people that when I flew over to Vegas, they asked me what have you brought to perform with? What props have you brought to perform with? And I took nothing. And I genuinely, my case, when everybody posts, I see these pictures that get posted on Facebook of, like, this is my box and this is what's inside it, and there's like, and they're carrying a little box that's this big, and there's like a pack of playing cards instead. I think that's great. If I took a picture of mine would just be a Sharpie on a table. That'd be it. You know, this is my box, and even now I've got that on a keyring, so it hangs off. But that's not out. Like I say, it's not out of. It's not out of. It's not out of convenience. It's because that's the way that I've sort of trained myself now to be able to adapt myself and think, and therefore it's easier for me than jumping to that. That's the only reason. It's just for me. It's just easier for me to do than it would be for anybody else. So again, sorry about the long-winded answer, Sean, but thank you for the good question, because I think that there were a lot of in-depth bits that I could go into there to sort of encapsulate and sort of, you know, expand upon.
We got a, and I hope I don't slaughter this. Siobhan, Winston, wanted to know if you mess up, what, like a mind reading trick or a propless routine, I'm assuming he's getting into. Is there like a default that you normally go to, or it seems more to me like you take failures and turn them into successes, like you take a no and just turn it into a yes.
I think it's the way that you set yourself up. The idea for me is, I think mentalism, the best way to explain good mentalism is the trick that can't be explained. It's, if you were to liken it as an analogy to any magic trick, it'd be the trick that can't be explained, and that's because your participants don't know where you're going. You know, so if I'll give you an example of this. If I said to you, can you think of a number for me, any number, it doesn't matter, 2 digits, 3 digits, whatever.
Okay.
Don't tell me, just think it.
Got it.
So at this point, you probably change your mind a few times, because I feel you're an analytical thinker. I also feel you probably settled. Did you settle on the 2-digit number?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now, it really doesn't matter what this number is, because it's going to tell me about you. But what I'm feeling here is, with you, you're probably the sort of person that thought of one set of numbers and you jumped to another. Now, be honest with me, did you first think of a number in the teens and then jump to the 20s? Or was it the other way around?
Started teens and then jumped into a 3-digit and then down to 35.
Okay, perfect. Now, obviously, at this point, it tells me how you think. And I think based off the back of that, I feel this, and this. Now, if you were watching that, I didn't have a clue whether you were thinking of a 1-digit, 2-digit, 3-digit number. I didn't know whether you'd gone from... I look at the miss. The miss is that I said it were in the 20s and you ended up on 35. But it doesn't matter, because all I'm doing is making it appear as if I'm weighing up how you think. So even if there's a miss there, I could have been relatively close. If you just said it was in the 20s, that would have been cool, because then all that I've had you do is just imagine counting up 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 in your mind and give me a clear yes when you've reached your number. And now I'd estimate how long it took you to count, and I'd guess what it is. Now, for me, even if I miss that, if you watch this back, you'll see that I didn't know where you were going with that. The likeliness of me being able to guess it is very slim, because I said 1, 2, 3, whatever number digit you want. But the point I'm making is, because you don't know where I'm going with it, that was over in the space of 20 seconds. Now, if that hits, great. If it doesn't hit, it doesn't matter, because the idea is that from that point, all I do is I say, now I think that tells me that you think like this, this, and this. So I'd say with you, you're a fairly headstrong person, and once you make a decision, you're the sort of person that sticks to it. And now I say, now I think you'd be perfect at this, and then I move into something, if this were more a close-up thing at a table or whatever, I'd move into something now where I'm definitely going to be able to peg the decision at the end. And now if I'm worried, let's say that I'm completely worried, I'd do something as bold as writing the number 35, palming it off if I had to, dropping it on the edge of the table that's far away from me whilst I reach to something over here, continued, and I said, oh yeah, one thing that I never pointed out, that's been there since the start, and I turn it over and it says 35 on it. And I can call that a hit back later on. Or if I really wanted to, I could take it as a miss and not worry about it completely and say, no, I feel I know how you think. Do you mind thinking of another number for me? But take your time, change your mind a few times, and moving to to a Swami or whatever. It doesn't make a difference as long as it doesn't seem like there were any pressure on the hit, because you can ham the hit up after. And I think what we do as performers is we build performance right up, and theatrically, sometimes on stage you have to do that. I'd say definitively for stage you need to have a direct and strong outcome. In close-up you get more leeway, but in close-up what I find is that most performance styles are not relaxed. And if you look at Chankanasta was so relaxed right to the point where it came to the reveal, and then when he knew the reveal had hit, that's where he'd recap what had happened, theatrically build it back up, and then ask the same question again. So let me give you an example of this. The number 35, it was just conversational, right? But let's say that I knew that I'd got 35 written on something that I'm holding here. And I'd say, so let's recap what happened. I asked you to think of any number, and I told you I was going to guess this number based on your personality. Change your mind 3 times, right? You settled upon one number that there's no way that I could know. And out of all the numbers you could have thought of, fate and time decided that at this moment you change your mind to this specific number. And then you ham it up after and you build it up theatrically after, and then you say, so again, what was the number you were thinking of? And they turn it around and boom, there it is. If you know you've hit, that's where you build it up after you know you've hit. But theatrically, don't worry, you know, like at the end of the day, the biggest, I think I've had some, like I say, I'm very open about this. I've had shows, I had a show in Newcastle that went completely tits up. I were only doing a 10-minute slot, so it's, you know, but if you ask anybody from any other show they've seen me at, it's been perfect. But there's some mess-ups that you just genuinely can't get yourself out of, and this was one of them. And what I'd done is I'd set up my show, and we're only doing 10 minutes, so I asked somebody else if they could do the pre-show work for me. So somebody else who said they knew my set went out and did the pre-show work. He says, oh, it's the woman in the black dress with the blue top on in the front row of the audience. So I'm thinking, great, perfect, no problems. I look down into the front row of the audience, and there's 2 women wearing the same outfit. Now, at the time, I was so sure the pre-show were going to come up, and I was so sure that it was only a 10-minute slot. I didn't take any billets on stage for me. I never asked her to bring a bag on stage when I asked her to come up, so there were no mobile telephone, there were no credit cards. And I'm in a situation now in front of about 500 people where I've just got to jam for 10 minutes. And it was an impossibility, but it was a big lesson in itself, because I cut my teeth in almost the best way to explain it, motorbike bars. They're not motorbike bars, but if you're in the US, you'll know them as motorbike bars. Bars that you don't go into if you don't want to get a bottle smashed over your head. You know, I cut my teeth in those places, and even if miscalling the sex on something on purpose. So let's say you were thinking of a male, and I already knew where you was because I peeked it, or whatever, and now I miscall the sex, and I say, now is this a female? And you say, no. And that leads you away from believing that I've got the information already. When I come back to revealing it now, this seems irrelevant. Even miscalling the sex of somebody that you were guessing, you'd get booed by the audience and stuff thrown at you. So you had to be really strategic and spot on. And I learned from that there's no artistic integrity in those places. You know, and then when I moved into theatre shows, and that was pretty much one of the first theatre shows that I'd done, I just took it for granted because I thought the audience are going to be completely different. And the audience was completely different, but not in a way that I could expect. They were so quiet. It was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop, and that you had to sort of have moments of confirmation. You had to have this, you had to have that. So to answer your question, you know, like, we've all messed up. We've all been in a place where we couldn't, you know, if you're doing so many shows, the likeliness is that one show every so often, whether you're jet lagged, whether you're tired, whether you're poorly, whether you're, I don't know, it's been your birthday and you're hungover from 2 nights before, whatever, you know, we've all had a show that at some point has gone absolutely tits up. So you just pick your head up, you keep on moving, and you've just got to consistently knock the ball out of the park. And if you can consistently hit, and you can consistently knock the ball out of the park, the one miss quickly gets forgotten. It's, you know, and I'm very open, I'll tell you, you know, I'm very open and honest about, that's probably the worst show I've ever done in my entire life. But if you were to ask people about the shows they've seen since, they know in their heads now that that was just a one-off, you know, it was just a bad day. Singers have bad days. You know, if you mow lawns and you've got a bad back, the likeliness is that your work's not going to be as good as it was the time before. So consistency is the key. If you can fail, don't worry about failing. You can fail, and that makes things more credible. take chances. If you're gonna hit, you'll hit. If you're not, just move on. Just keep talking and tell them that their decision tells you something. At least from the back of that, you know, you've come up with something. And psychics are great. Watch mediums. Honestly, seriously, take your time. Don't worry about your inhibitions, your beliefs, whether you like what they're doing or not. Just watch how many times they mess up. There's a beautiful clip, and I'll post it in the link below the interview, and it's a James Randi clip. And a psychic gives a reading to a guy, a skeptical guy, and at the end he says, "So how many names did she hit on?" And he says, "Oh, half. How many names did you throw out? Half a dozen. How many did she hit?" Almost all of them. There were only one or two that were you know, very close sounding names like Maureen, Maury, sort of thing. And then James Randi says, "Well, actually, she threw out 36 names," and then he starts to list every single one of these names in alphabetical order, and the guy had completely forgot. So it's about your recap of events. So it's the false memory that you create that ensures that there is technically no misses, and it's how you reframe or recap a situation that ensures the outcome of that particular situation, as opposed to it being a miss or as opposed to it being a hit. Don't really focus on that unless you're getting paid to hit. If you're on stage, you've got to focus on that, but in close-up, just focus on creating an experience.
You know, and that's something I've talking. When you were talking earlier, you were mentioning you create a moment, and it's not like, it doesn't seem as though, I mean, a lot of people have these sets that they, you know, like they have set tricks, and this is how I'm going to perform it, this is how I'm going to perform it every time. Whereas it seems more as though you just kind of walk out and you let the experience kind of go somewhere, and that's the trick. You know, whatever comes, that's exactly what it is, as opposed to the other way around, where I'm leading you down a garden path, and that's where we're going to go.
That's it, because at the end of the day, not everybody's going to want to experience things the same. We're all different. If you walk into a shoe shop and you go to select a pair of shoes and you went in with your brother, the chances are that you're going to choose different shoes. You know, and it's the same when you come across an experience of, in this scenario, you want to make it unique and you want to make it beautiful and you want to make it so inspiring that the person feels it was just for them. And how can it feel it was just for them if you've done the same thing 1,000 times? And one question to ask yourself is this, and I think it's a really beautiful question, is instead of taking your time to worry about what trick you're going to perform or what effect you're going to perform, take your time to worry about learning the person's name, learning about the person. How many people, and I don't want you to post on the boards, just think about this in your own heads, how many of you remember the name of the last person that you performed to? And if it were a family member, it doesn't really count. I mean, in performance in a bar, whatever, how many of you actually remember the name of the last person that you performed to? And we expect them to remember us for the rest of their lives, yet we don't take the time to even learn the names. And I'm not saying you have to remember every person you perform to, because the likeness is, if you're performing to lots of people all the time, there's no way that you could remember absolutely everybody. But just the last person, I feel, at least means that you've taken them into your heart for a short period of time and you've thought about them. You know, and that's the thing. That's what's important, is these people. You think about all the people that you've ever performed to. When you meet them in a bar, when you meet them on stage, you'll ask them, you know, what's your experience with magic? Have you ever seen something that was so amazing that it stuck with you for your entire life? And the likeliness is, they'll tell you a tale about some guy in a pub that performed a piece with dominoes, and we know that it's just a simple equivoque, but it must have touched them in such a way that they still tell that story 10 years later. Whether it be the granddad that used to make coins disappear and appear out the back of their ear. You know, the idea is that you essentially are going to want to create those moments, and you need to really talk to them. You really need to make them feel like you want to get to know them, as opposed to just brushing it off and just performing the same trick time and time and time again. It could be the same trick time and time again. You know, you've just got to fit it around them and ensure that there's, you know, the structural points, the spinal connections of the effect are the same, but just when you pack the meat on around that, it's catered for them.
Well, and likewise, I was going to say, and it helps also, like you said earlier, I mean, it's not that you're just propless. You have a whole list of tools in your tool belt, and I find that the more tools you acquire over a long period of time gives you that ability to say, hey, I need this right now, I need that right now. You can just call on it on an as-needed basis, giving it the appearance of seamlessness, really.
and that's what it's about. Is you're right, and like I said earlier, I don't think I finished off where it is that you know, to answer the other question that were asked earlier is just put extra things, like just take your time to look around at what you can use. You know, look around at what you can see. Become almost a chameleon that changes form dependent upon the situation that you're in. If there's a beer mat there, use a beer mat. You know, if there's whatever. Most of the time, I know this sounds ridiculous, but you ask most females, and guys, this will be the same for you, but ask most females, you'll find that most females have a memory box or a memory board, especially students, right? Now, everybody says that it's not professional performing on a beer mat. That's one thing that I've found. I've been a few times I've heard that comment. It's not professional writing things on beer mats. Well, do you know what? You go to a student's halls or a student's bedrooms and look at the things that they pin on their memory boards. I think that if it holds a relevance in the place that you're performing, to them it doesn't matter, because it's the experience that they remember, and the token of that memory is just something that rekindles the memory every single time that they look at it. It doesn't matter what you're really writing on, it doesn't really matter what you're performing on. Just look around, you know, and you'll always find something that you can go to. And that's it, you know. So to answer your question very quickly, don't worry about missing. Just be yourself and just create an experience for you and your participants as a unit, as an aggregate.
And have fun with it. That's the point. If we're not having fun, then what are we doing?
That's you know, well, that's it. I mean, I think there's, whilst you're having fun, to take it seriously is I mean, I think the fun comes for most people in the reveal. For me, the fun's not the reveal. The fun in performing for me is, you know, this is a thing. If I were to sit, I'd be the happiest guy in the world if I got happiness off of every single reveal that I'd ever done. And I know that I'm going to get the same reveal time and time and time again. How many times can you be happy about the reveal? But what you should be happy about is connecting with somebody and listening to their story. And I'll tell you a really cool story that was told to me. And it was told to me, whether it's a factual story, I don't know, and I'll ask Uri next time I talk to him. But and I think it was actually Uri that told me this on the telephone, for the likeness of it being factual. Yeah, I think it was. I think this is a factual story. I think it was Uri who told me this. He performed his spoon bending in a bar to, and I'm using the term here, a nobody. There's somebody that you'd sit in a bar and you'd pass over that you wouldn't even remember the name. And I'm not saying I'd consider them a nobody. I'm just saying that in the grand scheme of things, it's very easy to label them as a nobody. And this I'm telling the story how he told me it. And he performed it, and the guy said, "That's great." And Uri said, "I always made sure that I kept in touch with those people." He says, "No matter what else happens, just be a nice person, and you'll be remembered for that." He says, "It doesn't matter if you're good, you're bad, you're psychic, you're not psychic. Just make sure that when you enter their life and you take that small space of time, you do it in a positive way." And he did. And a year later, he remembered this guy. He's found this, you know, he got back in contact with this guy, and he sent the guy a Christmas card. And it turned out now that this guy was a director at the BBC. And obviously, from there, Uri Geller got a lot of work. And it's not about getting work, but what the point or the moral of the story is, that you never know who you're talking to. You know, you think that what you do is amazing. I sat and I listened to a guy tell me about, I just had my car sprayed, at the arch of my car sprayed, and the process that the guy told me about that he went through to get to him knowing how to spray a car, for me were a lot more incredible than what I do. I thought that the amount of work and time and effort that he put in, the strategic strokes that he used, specific pressures, and for me that were interesting to listen to. And not only that, at the same time, I spent my time listening to him. And he feels now, even if he never got told what I did for a living, I wasn't performing on him, I was just talking with him in the garage in general. But what I'm saying is that when you sit down with these people have stories too, and they all have an amazing story that they'll be able to share with you that'll blow your mind. And I feel that every single one of us, and I did this is what I always say whenever I'm sat with a group of people, and I'll always say, now for you, when I use the word magic here, I don't use it in the sense of a trick. I'm using it as a magical experience for you. The magic's in front of you, but for me, I have to tell you that after everything that every single one of you have told me, it's actually me that sat and had an amazing experience. Because it is, because their stories Just sit and listen to them. Next time you sit down with a group of participants that you've just met or whatever, and you've got a little bit of time, because time's the important word here, ask them to tell you an incredible story. Ask them if any one of them's got a story that they can share that's so incredible that it'd be unbelievable if they'd not witnessed it. And listen to that story, and I'm telling you, it just blow your mind, and it helps you remember why you're doing what you do. So the answer is, for me, that for the fun is meeting new people. The fun is connecting with people, and having a reason to be able to share a moment, to share space and time. And to share space and time, I think that's where the fun is for me. I don't care about the reveal. If the reveal hits or not, at the end of the day, if I've connected with somebody and I've learned something about somebody else on this planet and I've been a short part of their life for a small period of time, that for me is the biggest payment in terms of fun. More so than the reveal. So yeah, so I know that wasn't a question, but just to back off, to piggyback off what you'd said.
No, that's fine, man. Anytime you can throw in a thought, please do. That being said, actually, we're at a spot. Normally, in these Q&As, we try to do like some sort of performance. I don't know if you have something that we can do.
There's a myriad of things I could do, but the problem being, whenever you tend to do these type of performances, the first thing that happens is everybody jumps straight onto the back of you being a stooge, or me setting you up in some sense, or this being set up in some sense. And I feel that a lot of the time, it does a lot more hurt than it does good. So I'll do something that I find relatively simple, and therefore there's no way that this could be stooged. And then I'm going to leave you with a mystery to take away right at the end of this. It's not a performance, but it's just a moment that I think is going to be incredible. So.
Okay.
I'll do the performance. In fact, you know what? I think what would be more incredible is if I didn't perform on you, but the people at home get to experience this as well. And therefore, when they get to experience this, they're going to know that there's no setup, because they'll pick up on this as well at the same time. So I'm going to ask you a question, Alex, that I guarantee you've never been asked. But it's going to be a question that's so relevant, and it's going to lead to a moment of absolute astonishment among the people watching this. So I want you to answer honestly. Don't worry about anybody else's opinions. I just want you to form your own feelings on this particular matter. Now, do you believe, Alex, that even though the stars are thousands and thousands of miles away, they can have an effect on our life here and now?
In some way, yeah.
And I very much believe that they can. And when you start to think in such terms, it really breeds credence and credibility upon star signs and horoscopes. And I think one of the most fascinating things about horoscopes and star signs is, dependent upon the star you were born under, it completely depicts the way that we act as people. Right?
Right.
So in hindsight, if you could take into account the way that somebody thinks, that should lead to the way that somebody acts. And if we could take all that information as an aggregate, wouldn't that be able to lead us to the star sign the person's thinking of?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. So I'd like to try this out. So what I'd like you to do for me is think of a star sign. Now, please don't pick your own star sign. The reason I'm asking you not to pick your own, because it'd be very easy for me to profile you. It'd be very easy to go on Facebook, change your mind a few times, but settle upon one that you feel would be particularly fitting for this particular situation.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to tell the people at home that you're going to be guessing this. So the people at home, this is what I want you to do. Listen very carefully now. If you just to take a guess, like Aries, I guarantee you'd be wrong. It's not Aries.
No, it's not.
Okay. Now that's great, because that would have been amazing if it was, but it isn't. So if you just guessed, it wouldn't happen. So listen to what I'm saying and build up a picture as we go along. So could you focus on the star sign written in the air for me?
Okay.
Can you just think of the exact amount of letters?
What's up?
Can you think of the exact amount of letters in the star sign?
Right.
Okay. So just give me a yes when you thought about how many there is. Don't count it with your fingers, please, to make it very easy. Okay. So I want you to get into the frame of mind of a person that might have this star sign. I'm going to tell you what I'm feeling.
Okay.
So the people at home, listen to this and build a picture up of a star sign you believe it to be. And at the end of this, when I throw the star sign out, if I'm right and you were right as well, please post in the comments box. So are you in the frame of mind of the person that would be born under this star?
Yeah, I think I can do that.
Okay, so the first thing that I'm feeling is a fairly headstrong person. I'd say somebody who would be perceived as stubborn-natured and can be seen from time to time rushing into things without thinking. But that's not a bad thing. I'd say it means that actions speak louder than words. I'd say as well somebody that would put up a front, probably keep people at arm's reach. And I think that that'd be enough for everybody to be able to guess the star sign that you're thinking of. Just a yes or no, did that encapsulate or sum up the star sign you were thinking of?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It was very close to Aries, wasn't it? Was it Taurus?
yeah. It was.
Taurus, okay, cool. If you got Taurus, please post in the comments box. And I think you'll be amazed at just how many people picked up on that.
Well, yeah, with the headstrong and whatnot was like spot on. So I was just okay. Well, that was yeah. So yeah, no, that was nice.
But like I say, no matter what happens, everybody's going to believe that there was some sort of setup there or whatever. I think the biggest mystery is this, and you get to do this of your own accord. I don't know how you want to do this. If I asked you right now, how many roughly in that room? I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 decks of cards. How many decks of cards do you have?
Oh, probably 30 or so in the room.
Okay. If I asked you to think of 3 numbers, a small, medium, and large number, don't say them out loud.
Okay.
Go one either way on all them numbers.
What's up?
Go one either way on all of them numbers that you were just thinking of.
Oh, one either way on either. Okay, so
So the small, the medium, or the large number.
Okay, sorry, it's hard to remember all of them at once. Okay, yeah, no, I got that.
Maybe think of your favorite playing card, your favorite suit.
I don't really have a favorite playing card. I'll just pick one.
Just make one up. Cool, make one up.
Okay, I got one.
And now I want you to think of one of the 3 numbers. It's essential that it's your choice, and that's where you ended up in your mind, and not one that I could have forced.
Okay. Alright.
So, you're going to pick a deck, preferably one that's close to hand, but not yet. This is going to be at the end of the interview.
Alright.
Don't grab it yet. It's cool. It's at the end of the interview. Just keep your hands off camera. Keep your hands on camera so that people can see that you're not touching this. Now, I guarantee that whatever playing card you just picked will appear at whatever number you just picked from whatever deck you pick up. And that'd be a bigger mystery, and I think that's one that nobody would be able to solve. Now, like I say, the chances are, and I just want to see how many people have, in the comments, if I can look at this, how many people actually picked up on that. Let's see if we got anybody that picked up on that. That'd be a rather cool thing, so I'll just have a look. Scorpio, Sagittarius, I got Taurus. I thought it took a long time to figure out how many that is. Few people. Stuart Palm, you'd have been close as well. Taurus is a fire sign. Sorry, Taurus is an earth sign, Sagittarius a fire sign. But it's cool.
Well, you know, and I was thinking Sagittarius first.
Yeah, that's cool. So, off by 1.
Off by 1, that's right.
But yeah, so the idea is, for me, whenever I'm doing this sort of thing, it's very easy to resort to being able. I mean, it's 1 in 12, and once you've killed one anyway, the likeliness is that I just try to find the one that people will think of the easiest. And I think the one thing that swayed it for you, and be honest, if I'm wrong here, please tell everybody that I'm wrong. When I asked you to picture one in your mind, there's only a few that, if you don't know the star signs, you'd have been able to picture.
Right. I only had a few choices. The only reason I knew Sagittarius was because my girlfriend's a Sagittarius. But yeah, there's only besides my own's a Capricorn, which is one of the easiest ones, and I couldn't choose that. So that only left me with a few choices.
Right. So then it becomes 1 in 10, and then all of a sudden, by asking you to picture it, it suddenly goes right down to a 1 in 4.
Right.
You know, and eliminating one of the pictures straight away is cool. I asked you then, so the ones that it had been is Pisces, Taurus, Leo, or Scorpio, and they're generally the four that people would be able to think of. And and out of all of them, I just took the guess on the one that I'd go for. So it's not anything incredible, but you'll find that that'll hit more often than not.
Huh.
And it's restricting without seeming restrictive. So it's setting up a psychological force. It's very easy. But yeah, so.
Yeah, that was neat, man. Yeah, and I'll be perfectly honest. I don't know that much about star signs. I've never been an astrological guy, so that one was a little difficult for me to imagine as it was. But yeah, I guess Taurus would be the obvious one, wouldn't it?
Out of the lot, Taurus and Scorpio you tend to find are the most obvious ones because they're very easy to know what they are. Leo as well, but again, the amount of people you'd be surprised that don't know that Leo's a lion is unbelievable. But yeah, so the idea is for me is it doesn't matter where it is. Let's break down what happened and what was important there, and it's this is leading to a logical reason as to giving the reading. The stars being thousands of miles away and having an effect on our lives here and now. You know, that's a nice line. Is a real simple sign, a real simple moment of being able to get to where we need to be. And I think we overcomplicate things a lot. You know, if obviously in an actual performance you wouldn't ask them to make a fake sign up unless what they were doing is you'd guess theirs, and then after guessing theirs, you tell them to create a fictitious person up, and you're going to teach the group how to read this person. And it'd just be an exercise to test everybody else's intuitive abilities, and I think that'd work nicely. Normally, what I do, in all honesty, what I do is I just try to I'd use an anagram, I'd use eye to eye, whatever, to gain the star sign for the first person, and then this is the second phase that I'd move into when the group created a star sign, or and then just giving the headstrong whatever tends to be the most frequently chosen from an audience's perspective, a mass audience. So yeah, it's cool. And there is additions to that and other things, but yeah, I don't know.
Hey, so before we go back to questions, did you have you said you had some sort of contest you wanted to run? We weren't quite sure how we were doing that.
Yeah, normally, like I say, we didn't. This is one thing for the people that are watching to know, is me and Alex literally got about 4 minutes before the thing went aired, and then people were joining in on the conversation because the wrong link was posted, so we didn't get a chance to work out the semantics of this. But for me, I've got a new book coming out called When in Rome. It was a series of lecture notes that were compiled and collected together from a tour that I did a masterclass that I did in Rome. And now there was so much material shared at the masterclass that when I started to write this up, it's quickly become nearly a 300-page book. So it's a hard copy book, and the deluxe variations is sold out now. But I always keep a few back for myself. So I'm willing to have a competition for this group, so you can win a copy of this book. I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to think of what I could ask that would be befitting. That's not too difficult. So, right, okay. This is the competition. I think that because this will give me more joy just reading through these than anything else. If you send or you post this in the post, please don't email me or message me these privately. The reason being that I get a lot of messages per day, and I promise you I won't be able to read them if it were done like this. I won't be able to decipher them from mine. In brief, a story or an experience you created for somebody that were amazing. Now, I'll never know if they're fictitious or facts, or just something that's going to make me smile when I read it. So even if I have a terrible morning when I wake up tomorrow, when I start reading these, it's going to make me feel amazing. So just tell me what you did for somebody, or what you performed that would be an experience that you created for somebody else, and the best one I'll pick, and I'll send that person a copy of the book.
All right, now, we have to figure out a way to do this without Facebook getting angry at us. I know you want to have them posted down in the link.
Just post it as a comment.
Yeah. That's what we'll do. We just, to save us from Facebook, we just won't announce the winner to everyone. The winner will be contacted directly. How about that?
Yes, that'd be cool. I'll contact you personally, and I'll.
There you go.
But it just means that you know, I can it makes me feel good when I read these, and I can see that there are people out there spreading a sense of wonder, and I think that's what's really important. So yeah, like I said,
Right.
I don't know. So yeah, so just out of interest, and again, when it comes to stuff like this, and Alex, if I manage to get the card at the exact position, please let us know later on. If I'm wrong, don't tell anybody, and it'll be our little secret.
Yeah, no, I've just been looking at because for all the decks that you do see hanging around, there's decks everywhere that you don't see, like just out and about. So I'm gonna have to look for. I'm just gonna have to grab one and go. So we'll see how that goes.
Check all of them. Check all of them. The chances are with so many decks, it'll be in one of them.
Yeah, right. No, actually, in my room. Let's see here. Let's try to find. Now all the thread's completely full of guesses now. I can't find any questions. Let me see here. A little bit of dead silence. That's always fun. There we go. Oh, this one was one I was looking at, and this is one I wanted answered. It was from Chris Whip, and it was if you were given a chance to go back to your go back and perform for your first gig, right? What would you use as your opening effect, and what would you use as your closing effect? How do you think that would go?
Okay. The very first stage show that I ever did, I actually opened with Remons by Darren Brown. That was the very first thing that I ever performed on stage, and I gashed it up. I'm gonna lie, I bungled my way through it. But if I were to go back now, so the way that if I explain how I open my shows now, that probably answered the question to what I do back then. So whenever I open my shows now, I tend to start with a question, and it's a question that engulfs the entire audience. And the very first question that I ask my audience, and I'll ask you it, and you'll see what I mean. So let's say you're amongst my audience. I walk out. I'll thank people for the time, and I'm going to get to, and I always get to at the end why time's so important. If you watch my last interview, you'll see the speech about the 5 minutes. And I really feel for taking time off people. I open up and I ask a question: how many people in this room believe, by show of hands, that they have an intuitive power or powers? And a few hands go up around the room, and I say I find it interesting that not everybody's hand went up, because it's of my belief that every single person in this room has one intuitive ability or another. They just take it for granted. And now the second question, and the more important question of the two: how many people believe it's possible to have a genuine superpower? And no hands go up. I've never had a hand go up there. Maybe once, but you never do. And I say, I want you to imagine asking an 8-year-old version of yourself the exact same question, and I'd be willing to bet that the answer's completely different. And that goes to show you that as we mature, we lose one of the only superpowers we're given, the power of imagination. So no matter what happens tonight, I want you to use your imagination positively. So I'll put your hand on your heart for me. And I'll put the hand on the heart, and I say, I want you all to make a mental promise that no matter what happens, you'll stay positive. So they all make this mental promise. But what's beautiful about it is the entire audience is thinking of the promise, and they're not saying it out loud. And I think that's really befitting for the situation. So now the promise that they're going to stay positive all the way through, it comes to the point during the act, because there'll be a lot of people around the world that won't get to see my show. It'll get to a point where a paper ball's thrown out, a guy stands up, or a woman stands up, depending on who's picked, and I show an envelope that's been hanging behind my head the entire time. And I say, now, do you have any clue what's inside the envelope? The obvious answer is no. And I say, if you were to take a guess at what's inside the envelope, and there is a massive difference between guesswork and intuition, what would you say is inside there? And they say, a drawing of a triangle. And I say, it's not. Could you, using your intuitive abilities, tell me what you believe I'd see inside there? But before you answer, remember, this is not about me, it's about you. So they'll put the hand on the heart and they'll intuitively make something up. And then let's say that they say it's a tattooed shark. Usually these are the most incredible answers. And you say, okay, now be 100% honest. Have you thought of any of these drawings before this very moment? No. Did you know you'd be saying a tattooed shark out loud? No. It's essentially the next answer's the same. I want you to imagine it's 3 o'clock in the morning, the rain's tapping on the window, and for whatever reason you can't sleep. I want you to imagine that this drawing, this envelope was on your bureau or your desk, and you make a drawing and you seal it inside the envelope. What would you seal inside there? So they say, for example, a tractor. That's what I had in Vegas last, a tractor. And at this point, there's a really beautiful moment theatrically, and there's a spoiler here. So if you don't want to know the spoiler and you want to come through my show, put your fingers in your ears. I'll go, okay. I think that tells me everything that I need to know about you. It doesn't matter. Give him a round of applause anyway as he takes a seat. And I make as though I've messed the moment up completely. And everybody feels completely negative about it. And then I just proceed with the entire show and I never say anything. I get right to the end of the show after I give the speech about 5 minutes and why I do what I do. And as I'm about to walk off and I notice the compare coming back on, I rush back on and say, wait a second, just 1 second. I did say right at the start of the show that I show you time and time again that the greatest things in life always come full circle. And this circle's not yet complete. I only asked of one thing from everybody in this audience, and that's everybody to put the hand on the heart and promise that no matter what happened, they'd stay positive. And there was one part in this show where everybody felt completely negative. The drawing. Whereabouts are you, sir? What did you draw? And he says the drawing again. I pull the envelope down and I hold it in his hand. And I said, this should teach you that no matter what happens in life, you should always stay positive. And I throw the envelope and there's the drawing inside the envelope. And that's where I leave and that's my exit from the stage. So I always feel that with my shows, and I did go about that the long way, but the reason being is because I always try to make the start of the show resonate at the start and the end. So you'll notice in the Isabella Starr story, the smile, right at the start of the story it means nothing, but by the end it means everything. So the opening effect I feel in my shows personally have to press a point that hits home time and time again, so that when it comes to the end of the show, it's been hammered home so much that at the end there's that one hit that just totally knocks it home, and it confirms or proves everything else you've done. So in all honesty, the opening effect in my show is what is mind reading and what does it look like. So for my stage show, what does it look like? Because I try to take them through the variables of, first there's a question, what is mind reading and what does it look like? How does it work? What are your intuitive abilities? If you had the ability to read somebody's mind, would you use your powers for? And then I show something for evil, and I show something for good, and so on and so forth. Now let me explore your abilities a little bit, and then I'll bring, like, for example, an artist up and they'll do a drawing duplication, accountant will do something that's had a number. So that part of the show is very much ad-lib, depending on the person that comes up on the stage. But yeah, so I even invite skeptics up, to stand during my show. I do a bit about how I'm really a big fan of Isaac Newton and the third theory of relativity or whatever. I'll do a bit where I say everything's got to have an equal and opposite reaction, and for this to be good and proper, there's got to be skeptics. And then I'll get the skeptics to stand and I'll perform something on the skeptics. So each bit, every little variable throughout the show is that it's implicit of the fact, will this work on a skeptical-minded person? Yes, it will. Why will it work on a skeptical-minded person? Because this is not about science, it's not about mediumship, it's about intuition, and intuition is not bound by any law. It can be scientific and it can be mediumistic, it can be the whole host of the entire lot. So to answer your question, very simply, if I could go back in time and perform one effect to open up, I'd probably go back, smack myself in the head and say, kid, why are you trying to perform something that's as beautiful as Reminiscence and gashing it up? Perform something that's a little bit more low key and a little bit faster moving that engulfs your entire audience. And that's pretty much what I use to open my show.
All right. Well, I mean that's great advice. I mean that's all you can really do is connect right in with your audience, and that's what we were talking about earlier about kind of going into each show as it's going to be a unique experience, and connecting and
but like I said, stage shows, you don't have as much leeway as you do in close-up. You know, in stage shows, you've got to press a message, I feel, that's going to affect everybody simultaneously. In stage shows, you very much have the time, and again, time is the key word. I keep bringing that point up, is that, that each person, you can give them an amazing experience, and you can give them something incredible to take away. Because you have the time to talk to each one of them personally and affect them on a deeper level. On stage, you've got to try to encapsulate the same thing and do it for a mass amount of people at the same time. You know, so it's very difficult to do that. But once you find the balance, it becomes easier.
Right. It seems to me that a lot of the performance that's been going on at least in mentalism is it's like setting up a close-up stage on stage. It's close-up performance that's just done for everybody, as opposed to like stage magic, which can only be done out on stage. It's the same thing you'd be doing if you were going table to table. You're just doing it for everybody a little bit louder.
Do you know, it's very easy, and you're right to some degree there. You're right. But it's very difficult to think of it like that, and the reason being is that in close-up, for example, you've got to like when you're on stage. If I'm coming to time a reveal, the one thing I've learned a lot of is let's say, for example, that you were sat down. In close-up, you might perform an effect where you're gonna come to a reveal. Now, when it comes to the reveal, on stage you might stand up, and this gives like an air of the reaction being bigger. You know, when you're taking notes or you're writing something on a pad, and you turn it round, your reveals have got to be much bigger. So the moment's got to be timed just right. It's almost like a comic revealing a punchline. You know, a punchline can be really funny. You could give one comedian a joke and he'll perform it, and you could give another comedian the same joke and they'll perform it. And just based off the timing of the reveal, it could be really funny when this guy does it and not so funny when this guy does it. So I think you're right to a degree where you create the intimacy on stage for everybody to experience. But then you've got to remember one thing, and it's one of the most important points, is if I started to talk to you, for example, about your Auntie Wendy, and I started to talk about your Auntie Wendy on stage and this, that, and other, to everybody else in the audience, they don't have an emotional connection to your Auntie Wendy. So in the audience, they don't have a connection to your Auntie Wendy. So the likeliness is they're watching and they're an audience, right? But let's say, for example, I were talking about your granddad, whatever, your granddad Donald, and I sat to talk to you, and I say to you now, I want everybody to do this at the same time and think back to a fond memory you have with your granddad. Maybe a time where, you know, your granddads were always known for giving sweets, or granddads were always known for sitting you on the knee and talking to you, just being a granddad. And that all of a sudden now connects everybody, because when I'm talking to you now about your granddad, all of a sudden it's flashing memories back from their life about their granddad. And I'm only using the granddad as an example or an analogy because it's an easy one to make. But what I'm saying is that the idea is to connect everybody. They've got to have some attachment to what it is that you're saying. It's very difficult to do that if you just perform for that person for everybody else, because it's very easy to lose their interest very fast. So you've got to sort of take into account that if they don't have a connection with what it is that you're doing, then all of a sudden it's just like them watching a movie. And you think, if I said to you, you have a favourite movie, Alex?
I have a few of them, but I could narrow that down to just one.
There you go, right? Look what you just did. The reason that you have a favourite movie is because it affected you in some way, right? That's the point, and that's the point I'm pressing is when you put a CD on, you have particular songs that mean more to you. You have particular films that mean more to you. Based off the back of, well, with songs it could just be catchy, but I mean with movies, it tends to be that we watch it and we become so hooked on one bit of it that means so much to us that we remember that one scene for the rest of our lives. And that's the same with a stage performance. There'll be 150,000 movies that you watch throughout your entire lifetime that you just watch and you say that were a good film or that were a bad film, and that's it. You move on. And that's the same as stage performances, that when they're watching you, they're watching a film, or they might as well just be watching it on a screen. If you can create that moment, well, like I say, it's finding the balance between performing close-up and keeping it a perfect experience for the person on stage, yet at the same time affecting everybody on a mass level in the audience, so that they're connected to this close-up performance and they're hanging intently on every single word, all of a sudden to them it has the same effect that a favourite movie does, in the sense that they're locked to it and they become a part of it, and it lives on with them forever. And it's very difficult to find that balance. So it's taken, and I'm going to be 100% honest, and I bear no bones about this. I don't lie about this in any sense. I look at my performances 3 years ago, and I look back and just think, what were I doing? I look back and I watch myself, and this is what's beautiful about recordings, is I can look back. Now I'm more well paced. I know what I'm saying. Every little move that I'm doing, I know it's about to come out. I know that what I'm about to say, I'm about to say. You know and the reason being now is that I understand. I've taken the time to take a step back and understand people, to understand what they want, because it's not about me. And it's very easy to see a show that says, "Come see Peter Turner, the Mind Reader, live," and yes, you are the spectacle. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be above anybody else. I want them to be part of an experience that we all create. And if I'm part of that experience that we all create, the magic, like I said earlier on, is as much in front of me as it is as much in front of them. So I try to find something that connects all of us, so it becomes interesting to watch and it becomes interesting to listen to.
Right, less of performing it and more experiencing with. I absolutely agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. I don't want to feel like anybody's not having their questions asked, so I should probably get back to a couple of these. Valentin Kosovic was wondering what resources you think a young or a new, rather, mentalist, or it says people, but I'm assuming performer should read.
So it's very easy to direct you towards 13 Steps of Mentalism and Practical Mental Effects, because that seems to be the go-to resource, for people that are being led towards anywhere. In all honesty, in all honesty, it depends what you want to do with your life. It depends, it's very easy to lead you towards somebody else's inspiration and somebody else's teachings. But the problem with that is, I think it caps at some point your own creativity, because we become lazy. And I'm not saying that people watching this are lazy. What I'm saying is, it's so easy to be fed information. So it really depends where you want to be in 10 years, and it really depends on what you want to be doing. Bob Cassidy has a book called 39 Steps, and it's available for free at the library. So www.library with ly instead of li.com. And that has the 39 steps, and that's free to download, and that will give you Bob Cassidy's entire opinion on what you should read to get started in this. Now, if I were to give my honest opinion in how to get started with mentalism, is look at things, read effect descriptions, not effects, read ad copies, and think, how would I do that? And all of a sudden, what you tend to find is you might stumble across something that you never expected to stumble across, and your mindset then is on a different path to everybody else's, so that you become different and unique, and you become something. And I'm not by any means saying that I'm different or unique or anybody else that I know, because there's a lot of things that help make me who I am, and I'm not saying that I haven't read to get to where I am, because now I read anime, I go back to practical mental effects all the time. But what I'm saying is, for the startup or for the first part, try to create yourself. If you could all go back and do this, it'd probably be worth it, but just ignore buying, ignore reading for now. I'm not saying go out and start performing shows and think you're good, because the likeliness is you're not going to be. But take your time and try to create a few effects yourself. Watch a few mentalism performances and try to create what it is that you want to create, and learn by reading yourself. I know that sounds ridiculous, but learn by reading yourself, and go into yourself and try to think, well, what would I create? So yeah, and whilst we're at this point, I like to. It just came across. I mean, what makes me who I am now is I've been very fortunate to have good friends. I've been very fortunate to Michael Murray, that's watching today. Is Michael? I didn't realise until earlier on. I was just messaging Michael out of the blue how much of a crutch Michael is for me. Is like, if I ever need something posting out somewhere, or I ever need something doing, or I run out of specific materials, or I need a design for a cover, or I need something, something taking down offline, Michael's always there for me, and he does that. And he's a much better man than I am, and he does so much for me. It's unbelievable. I have Atlas Brookings that takes care of stuff with my intellectual property. I have people that will constantly soundboard like Mark Shandau. There's a hell of a lot of people that will sit there and listen to me go on, and they're not afraid to say to me, "Look, Pete, that's terrible. Change it." I have Dave Garber that's watching that's now started doing my proofreading editing. Mike Vance that also does my layouts and my proofreading. So a lot of the time now, if I were to go back 10 years, I'd have struggled to do all of that, because now I think with the amount of demand that there is now, I mean, I was saying to you earlier, please don't let people email me, and not because I'm rude, it's just because I'm getting 1,000 emails a day. I get every single time I log into Facebook, I have 99 plus messages, and that's every time I log in. So and then I have my Magic Cafe messages, which I think are full at the minute. I'm not sure. And then there's the other sources and other discussions that I have, and then when I take my time out to post, and then I have phone calls, emails. So I very much spend the first half of my morning whilst I'm travelling responding to mail. And it's become so difficult to do that on top of remembering people's products, posting out people's products, signing people's products and everything else. So normally now what happens is, I've got these people that are good enough to take the load off, and they really don't ask very much for it. And that's so just find yourself a group of good friends, and if you want to better yourself, find yourself a really good group of good friends that you'd do anything for. If any of them asked me the same, I'd go out of my way to do absolutely anything they asked me. If they asked me to pick them up from London because they were stranded, whatever, or send them money or whatever, it doesn't matter what. There's no request that's too big that I'd do for these people, So find yourself a series of good friends that'll do anything for you, and don't be afraid to smash your own ideas to pieces. Don't be afraid to have somebody else smash your ideas to pieces. And what you tend to find is that the people like Bob Cassidy, myself, Richard, and I'm not putting myself in the same league as these people. It's very difficult for us to take criticism from something that not me, I take criticism, I don't mind, but it's very easy for professionals to take a criticism because they've done years and years and years and years of learning, and that's why we get stuck in our ways. So don't ever be afraid to break your own patterns, and don't be afraid to remember that you don't have to be a chef to taste the soup. And I think it's very easy to do that. And I'm not saying that Richard Ostlin and Bob Cassidy don't take criticism, so I'm unequivocally not saying that. I'm just saying that the people who've spent so long in the industry like those guys, it becomes very easy for them to know that their way of thinking works and stick to it. I can't do that. I like to be, I like my stuff broken and put back together. So yeah,
That's how it gets better, isn't it? I mean, that's the scientific theory. You break it apart, and by the time you break it apart, you figure out why it didn't work, and then you fix it, right?
It is, and I think Bart. I hope you don't mind me calling you Bart. He's putting the hard part is finding those people, and it very much is. And this is one thing, and this is not trying to tell people how to find friends or anything else. Is that I had a group of lots of people, and I've refined that group right down to a minimum amount of people based on trial and error. Just always give everybody your time, always be nice with everybody. You always go out your way for somebody. I'll give you 2 examples. I'm not going to mention who this is. Today somebody sent me a message saying I need to go back through my notes from what I took in Italy. There was so much, it's very difficult. So I just posted them the new book. I give them the new book, and I think they were like, "What are you sending me this for?" And I think they were a bit taken aback because I think they thought that I thought they were asking, and I didn't think that. I never thought they were asking. And they said, "Well, what can I do to repay you?" And I just said simply, and I've done this a few times. I've just simply said, just treat somebody in your life to something. And that was today, and I'll do that all the time. For me, I think if you're giving somebody the gift of something that's going to make them happy, you'll quickly find friends. And it's not about giving them stuff or buying friends, but it's about just being nice to everybody. And no matter what somebody's request is, always do your best to help them out. Always do your best to respond to any messages you get. Always do your best to take your time out for everybody else. And then when it gets to a point where you can't do that no longer, your real friends will understand that sometimes you can't reply instantly. Your real friends won't get angry with you when you can't do a specific thing for them if there's something going on at home. Your real friends will understand that you're a human being, and that's how you find them. So, and magic and mentalism is great because just take a look at the thread. For anybody that's worrying about finding friends or anybody that's feeling they don't have anybody to talk to, just take a look at the Believe in Magic place. There's hundreds of people right there that are willing to talk about the same thing you're willing to talk about, and just sit and chat on Skype. It's amazing how many people have Skype, how many people you can connect with. And the great thing about being in the position that we're in is I have friends all around the world now. You know, I have friends that are all around the world, and we can connect in an instant. Recently, when I went to Vegas, I hung out with somebody I met called Chris Ramsey. We've become good friends. We went on the dune buggies together. We went to lunch. We hung out in Vegas. I'm going to stop by Florida to hang out with him. He's going to come over to my area, my neck of the woods, to hang out with me. You know, this is what I mean. It's about connecting, and that's what this gives us. It gives us the gift of connection. It gives us that gift to just contact each other and become friends, even if we didn't know each other. And that's the thing. Don't ever become unaccessible, and just do your best for everybody, and hope that people understand when you're rushed off your feet, and hope that people will know that you're a decent enough guy to make sure that any promise that you've made, you'll do your best to fulfill. You know, so to answer your question, to find these people, they're all around you. You just got to look for them. You know, this is the thing, and I think this is a point I made a long time ago. When you drive a car, when you buy a car brand new, you look around and all of a sudden you notice everybody else driving the same car as you, but you never noticed it before. And if you don't look for the beauty in the world, you'll never find it. So it's almost just stopping to smell the roses along the way, stopping to smell the flowers, and you'll realise that a lot of the time there's a lot of good in there's a lot of good in the world. You know, a lot more so than you'd ever believe. So yeah, I hope that answers that question for you. Yeah, man.
No, I absolutely agree. You know, it's always been my policy to ask very little to nothing from the people around me, and unless it's absolutely necessary. You know, and I always try to make sure that there's some sort of reciprocation involved anyway, because I don't. I don't want to say I don't like owing people things, but at the same time, there's a certain amount, especially in our industry, there's a certain amount of respect that comes with getting it yourself. That it's a weird dichotomy, because you need friends and you need people to where you can help and grow, but at the same time, like, secrets and we shouldn't share this and you shouldn't share that because this is his property, and it turns into this. It's very hard to grow. You know what I'm saying?
It depends. It depends on what your growth is. If you believe that you have to share secrets to become friends with people, then they're not really friends, and you'll realise that you're just giving them stuff for free. What I mean is this. Let's say that you find somebody and you wanted just to talk about somebody's performance, or you wanted to sit and you wanted just to chat about some errors that you had. I mean, most of the time I've found with people, this is the God's honest truth. This is how I met Michael Murray. So I met Michael Murray because when I first decided to release a high-priced product, Michael Murray is openly honest about this. He was very dubious that somebody he'd never heard of before had come along and they were asking for a high price. Now, Michael contacted me via Skype, and this is the God's honest truth. I promise you this is not a lie. And I didn't know this till this year, and I met Michael some years ago, so I didn't know this till this year. We chatted for that long, and I rambled on for that long, that Michael pulled the internet cable out of the computer just so that he could have a breather. That's genuinely true. He told me that. But me and Michael met. We talked on Skype, and we just chatted about the book. We just talked about the book, and then we ended up talking about other things, and then we ended up talking about other things, and all of a sudden it's become, to me, Michael's like a brother now. You know, it's become to a point where if I need something or Michael needs something, we'll do it. We're there for each other. If we talk about other things other than outside of mentalism, you know, we talk about life in general, and you seem to find that most of the conversations that we end up having, Michael will ring me up and he'll say, "Oh, he's so passionate about the stuff that he does now. You need to listen to this," and he'll perform something over the phone to me, and I'll ring him and I'll say, "Yeah, that needs changing, that needs changing." He'll do the same for me, you know. And we talk about life now. It's not the materials secondary. Even if tomorrow I decided that this wasn't for me anymore and that I'm never going to do it. And to be honest with you, I know this is going to sound a ridiculous comment, and I've been saying this for some time, but I get so tired of traveling. I get so tired of not having time for me. I have a 6-year-old little boy, And the amount of time I spent on the road, in comparison to what I see him, that the job's starting to outweigh me seeing him, and I know I'm doing it for his future, but I can't do that for much longer, and it's wearing thin on me. I sleep 2 hours a night, if I get to sleep at all. In Vegas, if you ask anybody that were with me in Vegas, I stayed up the night before I set off to Vegas. When I landed, I stayed up all night, and then I spent the next 2 days awake completely in Vegas. So that's nearly 4 days that I spent awake, and I still managed to do a stage show in between that and a lecture after. And the night after that, we went out to Area 51, and I managed to get, I'd say, about an hour's sleep. And then flying back, I can't sleep when I'm traveling, so I came back, and in total, I nearly not slept for 5 days. And that happens from time to time, where I'm getting 1 or 2 hours sleep. I'm not traveling, and then I'm having to respond to mails, and this is a thing that what you tend to find is the real people, the real good people, are people that won't attack you for not being able to get back to them straight away. If they ask you a question, you know, like they'll, because I get expected upon a lot, and I'm assuming a lot of other people do. But you learn them from that. Then people only expect that from you, and if they can, your life outside of that doesn't matter. To Michael, I know that if something happened within my life, Michael would actually care about it. So you start with the mentalism, and then you move on to getting to know each other personally, and you move on to getting a feel for each other as people. And that's how you can tell that these people are going to be real friends, and this is how you can tell that these people, because you create a friendship that exists outside of that. And even if I were to quit tomorrow, or Michael were to quit tomorrow, we'd still stay friends. You know, we'd still talk, we'd still be able to have a conversation about whatever, and it'd still be interesting.
Right. Yeah, you know, and realistically, that's exactly what I mean. You should be building relationships with everybody you meet anyway. Like, you talk about audience management, you try to involve the whole audience. Like, if I could, I would befriend each and every one of those people. I don't have the time for that, unfortunately. If they came up and saw me afterwards, it'd be, hey, how you doing? But you can't, unfortunately, you can't do that. And unfortunately, with your position, you're in such held in such high regards by so many people that everybody's vying for your time.
You know, this is a thing. There's a chap called Fabio that I met Mindvention in Vegas, and if you go on the Magic Cafe and you look on Penny for Your Thoughts, you'll see a post by David Thiel, or David Thiel, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And it says in there that I was constantly swamped. Now, this is the God's honest truth, and this is not a lie. When I turn, and it's not, I go from one end of a bar to another, and I'll be constantly asked questions all the way along. And I felt really bad because I promised Fabio that I'd spend a bit of time with him. And by the time that I'd got, it took me an hour, and this is not a joke, it took me an hour to get from, let's imagine a corridor that's 10, 15 feet long. It took me an hour to get from one side of the corridor to the other just to get to the stage show, to get on stage. Then after I'd finished the show, it was the same on the way back out, and I missed spending time with him. So Fabio, if you're watching this, I'm really, really sorry. I genuinely didn't mean to miss your time. And I remember this because he came up to me and he asked me for his time, and I said yeah. And I promise, and this is a promise, and you can all hear this, that when I fly into Los Angeles, I'm going to find where you are and I'll come and visit you, and we'll have dinner on me. So I try to spend my time for everybody, and if somebody strategically wants my time, I'll try to give it, and I'll try my best to respond to everybody all the time, no matter how long it takes me, because at the end of the day, their time is as important as mine. So I'll always do my best, and it's really difficult to do, and it is wearing at times. And you know, like now whilst I'm doing this interview, I'm due to be going out for dinner. And I've also got somebody else that's come around to have a jam with me. I'll try to give everybody my time, and it can become very wearing. But at the end of the day, at least I know in my heart that I feel better for that.
Well, that being said, we're coming up here on the 2-hour mark. We have some more questions, but knowing your busy schedule, would you like to cut off here?
You can ask me a couple more. That's cool by me. It's not a problem. I don't want to, like I say, I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance at getting something asked.
All right. Well, this one might be a good one to end on. It's Dan Ruse asks, since your birthday's soon, Genie appears and it grants you one wish. You get one wish only. What is it? And it's for yourself, not for anybody else.
Can you repeat the question? I just got the bit about the wish.
It's
My
Dan says,
birthday.
since it's your birthday, a genie appears, grants you one wish and one wish only. What do you wish for yourself? Remember, only yourself, not for anyone else.
Okay. If I could have one wish, just to answer this, one of my wishes came true recently. A big wish of mine was to. Kenton Nepper's like a dad to me. Kenton Nepper's like a dad to me, and he was the very first person that ever gave me a chance when everybody else kicked me down to the curb, and nobody had time for me. And this is one thing that I'll always remember of and about Kenton, is that every time somebody messages me, one of the main reasons why I have the time for them is because when I was, and I'm using the term nobody again, like I'm just the same as everybody now. I'm using the term nobody, and I mean this from the collective eyes of the professionals, not as a person. Nobody were interested in talking to me. Nobody were interested in replying to my posts. Nobody were interested in listening to me. I sent mails and products out, and nobody were interested in reviewing them. And I understand that they're busy people. I understand that they've got busy lives, so I never took anything away from any of them. But Kenton replied, and Kenton had the time for me, and I got to meet Kenton in Las Vegas. Kenton flew in from Phoenix, Arizona, to come out there and to see me, and so we spent some time together. So to answer your question, if I had one wish, if I could have one wish, it'd be to spend an hour with Theodore Hanneman. Probably. If it was in the performing world, if it was outside the performing world, it'd probably be to know that I could sleep and give my son the best life that he could have, but at the same time rest for as long as I wanted, and to catch up on stuff that I miss out on. Like, for example, Coronation Street. I love Coronation Street. It's a soap opera that's on British TV, and I don't get a chance to watch it. You know, it's sad that I like soap operas, but I don't get a chance to do it. I used to have time to read books. I wish I had more time to read books. I wish I had more time to rest and still be able to give my son the best life that I can give him. And that's all I'd ask for. If it was in the performing realms, I'd ask to spend an hour with Theodore Hanneman just so that I could get inside the mind of somebody I consider to be an unparalleled genius.
All right, man. Well, I think that's a great place to cut off here.
I want to thank everybody for the questions. Thank you all for taking your time out to spend it listening to me rabbit on and go off on tangents. Thank you for, again, being a part of this and being a part of my story, because in all honesty, I'm going to be 100% honest, I won't be sat talking to you guys now if it wasn't for you guys, and I very much appreciate it. Before we go, pick a deck of cards up. What were your favourite playing card?
Huh?
What were your favourite playing card?
It was the Four of Hearts.
Do you want to change that?
No, I really like that one. I have fans sign the Four of Hearts every time I see it.
Okay. And what were the number that you went for?
7.
So let's just recap on the entire process, just so that everybody else can get an honest and representative event of what went on if they've missed this before this point. I asked you to think of a favourite playing card. I also asked you to think of 3 numbers. What were the 3 numbers you initially thought of? Can you remember?
They were initially or before I changed them?
Before you changed them by one either way. And I never asked you to say these out loud, by the way. That's important for everybody to know.
Before I changed them, they were 6, 14, 14 and 32.
And then I said to you, now without saying them numbers out loud, go one either way. And then you went one either way, right?
Right.
And then, so then you'll know what the numbers are now. And then I asked you to pick one of them, and you chose 7.
I chose 7. Right.
That could have been 5.
6.
It could have been the initial. It could have been 13 or 15. It could have been 32 or 34, whatever. This could have been completely different if you chose a different playing card. When was the last time, in all honesty, you shuffled this deck of cards?
I keep it. This is the one I keep up here and play with all the time. So I'm shuffling.
So before the interview, you shuffled this deck of cards. You can hand on heart say that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's at least a few times.
Do you know the order of this deck of cards?
No, this isn't one of my marked decks.
Is there any way that I could know the order?
No.
No, there's over well over a quintillion different ways to shuffle a deck of cards, and it said that if you took all the life forms on the planet or in the cosmos and you asked each one of those life forms to shuffle a deck of playing cards, the likeliness is that a deck's never been shuffled in this order before. So even if this falls flat on its ass, at least history's been made in some sense today. So the Four of Hearts at 7, take them out and just let's see how we did, and then we'll end it there. Very carefully, attentively.
Yeah, right here.
So
We'll go
face up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This would be 7, right?
This would be 7, the Four of Hearts. That's cool, man.
No fucking way. Oh, excuse me, no way. Excuse me.
So yeah, I'll leave that with you, and that's something for you to think about. And everybody's obviously going to think that in some sense that you're in on this or that you knew what were going to happen. I guess you're going to be the only person on the planet that knows that you wasn't, and I'm going to be the only person on the planet that knows that you wasn't. And the people I've done that to live. But yeah, so for now I'll tune out there. And no matter what happens, just create an experience that people remember forever. So that's it.
All right. Yeah, no, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today and sharing your very precious time. We obviously, it's not beyond what you know. I mean, the messages I've had to you, it's been taken a while for you to get back to even me over the last few weeks. I know that you've been in Vegas though, and I actually seen the Loki Cross video that he posted for the light. So like I'm hoping to see more Vegas videos come out. But thank you so much.
There is a cool one, just quickly before you end, there is a cool video that I filmed in Area 51, but I've been talking to my representatives from my network and they've sadly told me that I'm not allowed to release any more videos, so I've got to take down all my videos. So if you notice them going over the next few weeks, that's why. My representatives have also told me I'm not allowed to post any fresh videos because it could do that, so it doesn't matter. But for now, guys,
I understand, man. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank Laura Isley for setting all this up. Without her, none of this would be possible. And we have more Q&As coming up throughout the month, but I don't think I have a list of them. So instead of ending off with that, I'm just going to end it off with a thank you, sir. And you have a great night.
Take care. Right.